It's time for ROTD Weekend. There's something magical about simplicity when it comes to cooking. What's making me think about this is I keep getting huge compliments from my family about my flank steak. I do this flank steak in the most simple way possible. I season it up with salt, chili powder, and garlic powder, and I put it on a rack on a pan in the fridge for 2 or 3 hours. And then I let it come up to room temperature because, as you probably know, they like their steak a little bit more like medium well done. But if I was going to do it rarer, I probably would keep it cold so that it gets to be on the heat for longer and get a better crust. But that is beside the point because it's not what I do for them. So I then bring it to room temperature, and then I put a little bit of cooking oil on it. Usually it's grapeseed oil, but olive oil, whatever I have there. Just a nice light coating, drizzle with a brush, or I use like an oil mister. And then that goes over high heat on the grill for 5 minutes per side. And then because of the more well done liking, another 2 minutes per side. The nice thing about that flank steak cooked that way is that it's not really an even thickness. Some of the flank steak is a lot thicker than others. So actually, the thinner parts are perfect for those in my family who want it that little bit more well done, whereas the thicker parts are more like a medium, which is where I want it. So yeah, it just turned out perfect. I take it off the grill, let it rest for like 5 minutes, and then I slice it thinly against the grain, and we put that on like burrito bowls, or I like put it with stir fry vegetables with some Asian flavors. And then I have leftovers. I usually do 2 when I do it. We'll have leftovers and I put them into like burritos and just all kinds of things. But every time that I make it, they are just like, Mom, this is the best steak. I don't even know why we go to steak restaurants. This is so good. And they love it so much. And I'm always just like, really? This? Because it's just so simple. But like I'm saying, simple is magic, right? It's salty and it's got some seasonings. It's got some char. Of course, I did leave it in the fridge for that like dry brining, which lets the salt kind of permeate and get in there. Part of the key is, of course, I'm cooking it to the doneness that they like. And then also slicing it against the grain so it's nice and tender, easier to chew, and thin slices for the same reason. Oh, I should also say that like I let it rest for a good 5, sometimes 10 minutes before slicing it. As I slice it, I'm transferring it to a plate, like a platter. And then as juices accumulate on my cutting board, I kind of scrape that over the meat. So they're getting those like salty, flavorful juices, even on the like middle pieces of meat inside the slices, which didn't get as seasoned from the salt dry brining stage as the like outer coating, you know? But yeah, they just love that simple thing. And it's really about that basic technique, I think, that you learn. And I want to say perfect, but when it's that simple, like, is there really like perfecting? But I guess I just listed all the ways that I do this thing that I think is very simple. So maybe it's not as simple as I think, but it's not like a big complicated meal with like all kinds of sauces and trimmings and fancy garnishes, or like all of that has its place for sure. And I use those things all the time, but bringing it back to the simple and the basics is often when I get the biggest compliments from my people here at home. So I guess I'm saying if you sometimes feel like you're not doing anything fancy, it's, just that old thing that I make, it's probably simple and it's probably magic. Now I'm going to tell you on the theme of simplicity, I'm actually sharing an interview with you, a conversation between me and someone else from a while ago, because things have been crazy around here and I need to keep things a little bit more simple. This introduction was brand new, and the end after the conversation will also be brand new. But the conversation, it's possible you've heard it before, but I want you to listen again because it really is about how a little simple thing can be so incredibly perfect. I am talking today with my friend and best-selling cookbook author, Emily Pastor from westoftheloop.com. She is the author of Instantly Mediterranean, Epic Air Fryer, The Joys of Jewish Preserving, and of Food Swap, Specialty Recipes for Bartering, Sharing, and Giving. She is always somebody wonderful to hear about food and cooking from. And this was actually the first of the surprise recipe of the day episodes that I did. So Emily was the first person to walk me through a recipe, and I think it just highlights the beauty and the magic of simplicity. Let's listen to my conversation with Emily Pastor. Hi, Emily. Welcome back.
Hey, Christine. Thanks so much for having me on.
I'm super excited because I'm doing something a little bit different in this episode, and I knew that I wanted you to be the first person that I do this new format interview with. We will do that in a little bit. First, tell me, what has been going on in your cooking world? Have you been doing anything exciting lately?
Well, this past weekend, I just taught a few culinary classes at the Chicago Botanic Garden, where I usually teach. So that was really fun. One of them was a class on Mezze, actually.
So, okay, what exactly is Mezze?
Great question. The students also had that question. What I tell people is everyone seems to know what tapas is these days. Mm-hmm. And I think people also know that tapas is Spanish. But what people may not know is that that's sort of very similar tradition, this tradition of like small plates, sharing. Maybe it's like what you eat before dinner. Maybe it turns into dinner. But just this idea of small plates that you share with friends over a glass of something, it really happens all around the Mediterranean, not just in Spain. Mm-hmm. And they just have different names for it. So in the Middle East, it's called mezze. In Spain, it's called tapas. In Venice, it's called cicchetti. My Italian is non-existent, but so it's basically that same idea as tapas. It's small plates. It's for sharing. There could be cold things, hot things, dips, spreads, maybe little pastries, maybe something a little heartier, like maybe like a little meatball. Though this class ended up, the one I did on Sunday, the Mezze class, it happened to all be a vegetarian menu for the class, which was interesting because a young couple came up to me after the class and thanked me because they said it's hard to find cooking classes with a vegetarian menu. So something I'm filing away for later.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I want to go back to like the definitions of this for a second. So you said it's like small plates, often before dinner. Is it something that people do all the time or like special occasions, Saturday, out for a drink? Or is it kind of your daily, like, oh, we're going to have some of these and then we'll have dinner after? How does that work?
It varies. It could be all of those things. So it could be just after work, almost more like what we would call happy hour. So, on the way home from work, before heading home for dinner, you stop, you meet a friend, you have one or two of these dishes and a glass. It could be that simple. Mm-hmm. It could also be a way to entertain so that if you were inviting people to your home, you would just put out this sort of spread of these, salads and cold dishes and little things, and people just can help themselves. The idea that the host would then join them as well, so hopefully it's things you can prepare in advance. And it can take all of those forms. It can be in a restaurant, it can be in the home, it can be a special occasion, it can be a daily, just something you would meet a friend.
And if you were gonna like do some mezze at home for some people coming over, are there guidelines about like what to choose, what bases you should cover? Or maybe even the menu that you did for the class sort of span that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I did 3 things in the class, and one of them was a stuffed date. So just a date stuffed with some Marcona almonds and a little bit of either goat cheese or blue cheese, sort of depending. And you can warm those up for 5 minutes in the oven and drizzle them with some honey or not. So that's something that's, something super simple, like a finger food, right?
Yeah, love it.
One of the other dishes, a little bit heartier, was a halloumi, which I know you know what that is, Christine, but for the listeners, halloumi is like a squeaky cheese that doesn't melt when you heat it up or grill it. So it kind of holds its shape. So it's excellent for the grill or the stovetop. And this was with roasted grapes, which is really seasonal right now. And if your listeners have never had roasted grapes, guys, go roast some grapes. Mind blowing. So you roast these grapes for 30 minutes in the oven, which is super hands off. And then when they're done, you pan sear some halloumi, which takes, minutes max. you put it over the roasted grapes, drizzle it with some really good balsamic vinegar or pomegranate molasses if you happen to have that in your pantry. That's a very Middle Eastern ingredient. Little fresh herbs, boom. So that's like a more of like a hot dish, but still very easy to prepare. And then the last dish was the Greek dip scordalia, which is like a mashed potato dip. You're nodding.
I know. Well, I don't know.
Nodding, you guys.
I don't know if we've ever talked about this, Emily, but maybe when I lived in Toronto for 10 years before moving to Florida, and we lived in Greektown. So like everything that you're talking about was just like in the markets and in every single restaurant on that street. So yes, the scordalia, they actually, you know what? Halloumi was not a huge thing when I lived there. Is it Saganaki? Do you know that cheese?
Yeah, I think they use the same cheese to make the saganaki, maybe. But right, the saganaki is when it's like on fire or flambe.
Yeah, but it always seemed to get a little melty, I thought. But you think that the saganaki is the name of like the technique or the dish, and that they're using the halloumi cheese in it? Interesting. I'm writing this down because I want to find out. I always thought it got a little meltier than when I pan fry halloumi.
I definitely think saganaki is the name of the dish, not the name of the cheese. But I wouldn't swear that they're using halloumi. But we should look that up.
So I'm looking it up, and you must be right. I think it's the name of the dish, because you can do feta saganaki and mussel saganaki, perhaps. So it's more the dish of having that like flambe thing happen, and it uses halloumi. Okay, I didn't know that. I love it.
Yeah, so it was a little bit of as you recognize, a little bit of a Greek-inspired menu that we did in that class.
And you were going to talk about the scordalia? What is that one?
So that is a Greek mashed potato dip. My version incorporates some blanched almonds that have been like ground, sort of almost to a paste, with some garlic in the food processor. And then you fold that into the mashed potatoes, and you can have it be a bit thicker and serve it more like mashed potatoes, or you can thin it out and have it be more like a dip that you could serve with like crudités or vegetables.
And it's served cold, right?
Cold or room temp. Yeah.
I don't know that I would like to try your recipe, because I don't know that it's ever been like one of my favorite things. I think it always takes me by surprise. I think I'm like, ooh, what is this dip? And I dip into it, and then I'm like, oh, kind of like cold mashed potatoes. Like I'm expecting like tzatziki, and it's this other thing, right?
Yes. I think the almonds help because they give it a little extra note of a flavor note, but I just love potatoes so much that I'll eat them in any form.
Yeah, I love them too. They are one of my comfort foods for sure. Okay, that is super exciting. The class went well. People liked it. They learned things. They tasted things.
They seemed very happy. So it was fun. It was really, really nice.
That's so cool. I love it. Mezze. Now I want to have mezze myself right now. So we're doing this new thing on this show starting today, where the guest that I have on tells me about how to make a recipe that they love, and I don't yet know what it is. Have you chosen a recipe, Emily?
I have.
Okay. Well, big reveal. What is it?
Okay. So coming off of the thing we were just talking about with the scordalia, the recipe that I want to talk to the listeners today about is my dairy-free version of mashed potatoes.
Oh, dairy-free mashed potatoes. That is related to the scordalia. Very cool. And before we jump into it, is this a recipe? This is one of your recipes? Is it from your site, one of your books? Where is this one located?
So people can find this recipe in my most recent book, which is called Instantly Mediterranean. It is a recipe that was developed for the Instant Pot, but you absolutely don't need to have an Instant Pot. You can do this on the stovetop as well. And when I talk to you about it, I'm going to talk about both the Instant Pot and the stovetop version.
Okay, very exciting. Let's go. How do you make a dairy-free mashed potatoes?
Okay, well, first I want to just talk about why one might want to do this, right? Because I feel like I thought about this because holidays are coming up, and mashed potatoes is something that's part of a lot of fall celebrations. But a lot of us, right, are dealing with family members or friends who might be vegan, they might be dairy free, there might be an allergy involved, people who keep kosher and they don't mix meat and dairy. So I think there's a lot of reasons why, this might be a really nice recipe to have in your back pocket.
I think that
as we approach this season.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think about this often, that when you have something that's essentially a vegetarian dish and then you make it dairy free, it becomes available to like almost everybody who's going to be at your table, because I do a dairy, like a meat, like a vegan gravy, and I love it because it means that anybody at the table can pretty much pour that on whatever other part of the meal they're going to have, and they can add gravy to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It's like it makes your table that much more friendly and welcoming, right?
Yeah, super inclusive. I love that. Okay, so how do you make these?
Okay. So first of all, what we're going to do is I want to encourage everyone, if you're making mashed potatoes, steam your potatoes instead of boil them. So that's the first thing.
Oh, talk to me about this.
So a couple reasons why I like this. Your potatoes don't get waterlogged. They don't lose any of their nutrition. And yes, potatoes are nutritious. They get a bad rap, but they are nutritious.
Fair. As long as they keep their nutrients and you're not just draining them down the sink, draining all the nutrients down the sink in the water. Gotcha.
Exactly. I think everyone knows that when you boil any kind of vegetables in water, some of the nutrients are leaching out into the water. So you're going to keep all the nutrition in. They're not going to get waterlogged, and they're going to be extra fluffy. So this is really easy to do in an Instant Pot, because what you can do is you pour a cup of water in the bottom of your Instant Pot. You put the little rack on, and then you put the potatoes in like a colander or a steamer basket. But of course, you can just as easily do this on the stovetop. People know they can steam stuff on their stove as well. So it's really a very similar technique. You want to start with your potatoes peeled and cut into maybe like 1-inch cubes, just sort of chunk them up, put them in that colander or that steamer basket. Again, if you're using the Instant Pot, it's a cup of water in the bottom of the Instant Pot, place the colander on the rack. If you're doing it in the stove top, get a nice big Dutch oven, put your steamer basket or your colander in. You want water just sort of to touch the bottom of that basket or that colander. Bring the water to a boil.
No salt yet?
Not yet.
Okay. I I think, you know what? I'll just say, like, working in my parents' restaurants and stuff, obviously we were boiling big pots of potatoes all the time. And the, like, is the water salted question was always, like, you peel a bunch of potatoes, you put them in water, you put them off to the side, and then you need to remember later, did we salt this or not? So we always had these, like, sticky notes, salted or unsalted, that we would stick to the pots, because salt is so important to cooking potatoes. But what you're doing here, they do not need to be salted before they're cooked.
Right, exactly. And when I'm boiling potatoes, I salt the water aggressively, just like when I'm boiling pasta.
Yeah.
But in this one, we're going to salt it later.
Okay, cool.
So you want to bring that water to a boil. Again, on the stovetop, you would bring the water to a boil. In the Instant Pot, it's super simple. Put the lid on. You're going to set your cooking program for it's 8 minutes at, high pressure. So super easy for your Instant Pot. If you're doing it on the stove, bring that water to a boil and then get your potatoes in their little basket or colander in there, cover it, turn the heat down to medium. They're probably going to need about 15 to 20 minutes steamed, but you want them that fork, tender, right? You put a knife in or tines of a fork in, and they're going to just go through with no resistance.
And it's just taking longer than when you boil them because air is not, conducting the heat as well as the water would be.
Okay. Exactly. This steaming takes a bit longer, not terribly longer.
But you would think, I'm wondering if you're doing this, you want your potatoes to be a little bit smaller. Like I sometimes make mashed potatoes when I'm boiling them, and I'm like almost just having the potatoes. Like it doesn't matter because they're going to cook. No problem. You want them to make sure, you said 1-inch chunks. You want to really do that because otherwise you're going to be waiting a long time.
That's exactly right. And it's going to take it would take a long time for the steam to go all the way to the center of those bigger pieces.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Then what?
So first of all right. So then say your potatoes, you're either if you're using the Instant Pot, your cooking program's done. You're on the stove. They're nice and tender. Don't throw out that water that was at the bottom of the Instant Pot or at the bottom of your pan. Save it. Okay. Because it's gotten starchy now and we're going to use it. But I'm going to take a step back. While the potatoes are cooking, either in your Instant Pot or on the stove, what you're going to do is you're going to get a little bitty, your smallest little saucepan, and you're going to put in about a sort of scant half of a cup of olive oil. Don't freak out. It's a lot of olive oil, but remember, no dairy.
Okay.
And you're going to put, you could do a little bit less, but let's say a half a cup approximately. You're going to put some garlic cloves, peeled, but not chopped up, whole peeled garlic cloves in. Maybe it's up to your heart's content, but a lot. I do 9 for 3 pounds of
Oh.
potatoes, guys.
Oh, and is that, I was actually just literally writing down how much potatoes did we start with to ask later. So it's 3 pounds of potatoes peeled and then in 1-inch chunks to start. And then for that, you do the olive oil, a half cup. I have a question before we proceed. Those potatoes in the Instant Pot, was that a natural release or a quick release?
Quick release.
Okay, quick release of pressure from the Instant Pot. No releasing of pressure required if you're doing it on the stove. Okay, so you've got half a cup of olive oil in a little saucepan with like 9 or 10 cloves of peeled garlic in there.
Yep, and a sprig or 2 of rosemary if you're a rosemary fan.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, and you're just going to want to put that on a very low simmer. If your stovetop's got one of those like little burners that's sort of for like low simmers, use that one. And you're just going to keep, while the 20 minutes or so that it's taking for your potatoes to cook, just keep that on that low simmer. And basically what's going to happen is you're going to be poaching those garlic cloves in the olive oil.
Oh my goodness.
And it's going to infuse the olive oil with that garlic and rosemary flavor.
I don't need the potatoes. I can just eat the olive oil with a spoon at this point. Or the garlic cloves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or just dip some bread in it.
Yeah, I'm thinking you have to add an extra like 2 or 3 cloves of garlic at the beginning so that you can eat them before, because I'm assuming this is all going into the potatoes, but I want to eat some of them. So yeah. I'm going with 12 cloves of garlic to start. Okay, got it.
You know what? I never thought of that, but that's actually a brilliant idea. Like put in some extra garlic cloves because now you've got this sort of like poached soft garlic. You can mash it into anything or spread it on bread. So then, say your potatoes are done, whether it was stovetop or Instant Pot, you've reserved that cooking water and you've drained your potatoes, reserving the cooking water. I have to keep saying it because otherwise I know you guys are going to be dumping that water down the sink, right?
Have you heard my tip for remembering to get your pasta water? Do you know this one? No?
Tell me.
Okay, so as soon as a recipe says, I'm reading the recipe and it says reserve a cup of water before draining or whatever, I immediately go and get my colander, I put it in the sink, and I put a measuring cup in it. And that way when I'm about, I feel like people think I'm going to say pour it through the measuring cup. No. It's just as soon as you go, you're carrying your big pot of pasta or potatoes, and you get to the sink, ready to drain it, and then you see the measuring cup, and you go, oh, stop, go back, scoop, now drain, right?
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Okay, guys, so do that because that's brilliant. And then once you've drained your potatoes, get them right back into either that Dutch oven or that pot or back into your Instant Pot. Put it on a super low flame or that saute setting on your Instant Pot and just toss them for a minute or two because it's going to just dry them out a little bit more. Maybe you guys already know that trick from mashed potatoes, but that's a great trick. Always.
Well, I do know it, and it's because drier potatoes are fluffier potatoes, right?
Ding, ding, ding. Yep. Which is kind of the whole point, right, of why we're steaming them to begin with.
Yeah.
And then what you're going to do is you're going to start mashing them. You can either do it right in your Instant Pot or on the same, again, using the same pot that you cook them in, and start gradually adding that garlic infused olive oil as you're mashing. I would discard the rosemary because it gets a little yucky and it's kind of done what it's given up all its flavor, but obviously we're going to save those garlic cloves and we're going to incorporate them.
So wait,
just start mashing.
But you're not adding the garlic cloves now. You're just adding the olive oil, or you're just pouring in some of the garlic as well as you go.
Yeah, exactly. So just, you can start pouring it. You can either save the garlic cloves, and kind of maybe mash them with a fork a little bit and then add them. It makes it a teeny bit easier. Or just start, if your garlic looks really soft, just pour the olive oil into the potatoes. And then if some cloves grow in, great, keep mashing. And you're just going to keep doing that. This is when you want to start salting it. And to the extent that you find that the potatoes are a little thick or a little bit gummy, that's when you're going to add that reserved cooking water. That's nice and starchy and it's still quite warm, hopefully. And you're going to use that to thin out your potatoes as you go. And then that's all it is starting to incorporate the olive oil, the garlic cloves, reserved cooking water, and mashing salt and pepper until you get them the way that you like.
I love this so much. There's so many new techniques and brilliant ideas in here. I want to ask something. I have I don't know if it's still on the website. I might have taken it down, but there was for a long time an olive oil mashed potatoes recipe on my site. And one of the things that I loved so much about it was that the olive oil gives them this yellowish color, which I think my brain interprets as buttery. I look at do yours have that kind of a little bit of a yellow tint from the olive oil too?
Yes, and it particularly works well if you use those Yukon Gold potatoes, which kind of have a little bit of a yellowy tinge to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think have a buttery flavor just kind of naturally. So that's a really nice choice, is to use the Yukon Golds, and you're going to get a beautiful yellow color from the potato, from the olive oil. And yeah, I think it makes your mind just think like, oh, these are going to be delicious.
Yes. Oh, I love this so much. So people can get this recipe. Well, we just explained it very thoroughly, so they could listen again if they need to, but they can get it in your cookbook. Where is the best place for them to find that?
Again, this cookbook's it came out in 2021. It's still quite readily available, certainly online. It's called Instantly Mediterranean, and it is a book of Mediterranean cuisine for the Instant Pot or other pressure cooker and the air fryer.
That is fantastic. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Emily. I think that this has been a wonderful first experiment doing the talking through a recipe. Thank you for indulging me. And maybe just let people know where they can find you online if they want to ask questions or see more of your work. Where is the best place for them to go?
Of course. So my blog is called West of the Loop, all one word.com. And that is my handle on social as well. And so you can find me on Facebook is a good place.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I told you, you always want to hear from Emily Pastor, and you need to go and check out her cookbooks. I will put links to those books in the show notes for this podcast episode, or go to wherever good cookbooks are sold and look for Instantly Mediterranean, Epic Air Fryer, The Joys of Jewish Preserving, and Food Swap. And yeah, like I said, simple food is so great. Learning a simple technique like steaming those potatoes for mashed potatoes, just brilliant. You have got to give it a try. And then as to what I am trying, or really what I am working on in my kitchen, I told you that I am working on a fried chicken recipe, but that I wanted to do a little in-person research. So I went down to my local Florida restaurant, the Townhouse restaurant, and I thought that they had fried chicken on the menu. I thought I'd seen it there before, and I was planning to find out for sure. They do not. They have country fried steak, which is kind of what fried chicken is based on. You have basically like chicken fried steak, which is where you take a steak and treat it like it's fried chicken. And then because steak is thinner than like a normally big fried chicken piece, when you pound a piece of chicken, like boneless chicken, into like a steak thickness and then fry it, that is fried chicken. So anyways, I did not get to have fried chicken, but I did have their country style steak, which is the chicken fried steak. And it was delicious and really, really helped me figure out what I want to do for this dish, which I am working on this week, fried chicken. And there is some other chicken going on. I have a really great pulled chicken recipe on thecookful.com for like different ways of doing pulled chicken, like oven, slow cooker, instant pot. And I wanted to take those and see which one was best in a pulled chicken sandwich, or if you need to adapt any of them when you're doing them as sandwiches. So I'm working on that this week, making the 3 kinds and then trying them out in a pulled chicken sandwich. And finally, I am looking at working on smoked chicken breasts. I have a new grill and I want to get some wood chips. So it's not actually a smoker. I want to get some wood chips and try smoking the chicken breasts inside of my grill. And it's really like a first experiment. See how that turns out. See what I need to do differently and go from there. So those are the things that I'm working on this week in my kitchen. As to what is going live on the sites this week, there's a new recipe on each website. I am continuing my obsession with lamb, and I've talked about it on the show. You might have seen my lamb chop video on social media. It went live on TikTok and Instagram Reels and Facebook Reels this week. So if you haven't seen it, find me in those places, Cook the Story, and you'll see that lamb chop video. But what's going live this week is actually the air fryer lamb chops. This was one of those things that I was like, okay, people like doing things in the air fryer. I have a bunch of these lamb chops from all this testing. What happens if I toss them in there? Could they possibly turn out good? They possibly turned out good. They're really, really amazing. I am delighted with them. Cannot wait for you to try them. And I am so happy that the recipe is going live on Cook the Story on Monday. And then on the Cookful, I am talking about chicken more, and we're doing a blackened chicken recipe that I probably told you about, a month or so ago that we are working on. So that is just a nice classic as well. That's going live on thecookful.com. As to what you can look forward to on this podcast this week, that's right, recipe of the day. Every day, 7 days a week, there is a recipe to inspire you of what you can make that week or in the days ahead. So there is those air fryer lamb chops right there. I'm looking at my calendar, and the blackened chicken. Those are coming up this week. There is a really nice chili sauce. Oh, and a homemade tartar sauce. Ooh, and another, like a steak recipe similar to that flank steak I told you about at the beginning of the show, but not as simple as that one. I will link to a simple how to cook flank steak recipe for you, which is very similar to what I told you about, except the recipe on the site doesn't cook it for as long because most people don't want their flank steak as well done as my household does. And I will also be telling you about a different nice big steak cut with some more less simple touches. That is happening this week as well. Make sure you are subscribed so you get all these episodes. Go on your phone to your favorite podcast app and search for Recipe of the Day. You will find me there, or go to cookthestory.com/ROTD. That's like the landing page for this podcast. You will find everything you need there. I want to say a big thank you to Emily Pastor for her simple, wonderful cooking, and a big thank you to you for listening. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.